Hello and welcome to the Soulful Shift podcast. Today's episode is actually going to be one of the biggest I've likely done, possibly ever. It is a really important episode. I'm going to talk about the fact that you are incredibly rare and very, very different, and what that actually really means. And I'm not saying this from an egoic place, like you're rare and different and special, you're a special snowflake, like we hear, right? No, this is not what I mean. We're all unique and rare individuals. And we all came here for a role to play on this planet. There's a purpose that why you're here. And if you are listening to me and if you've been following me, there is a very unique role that you came here to play. And what I see so many people doing is where they're really staying stuck in their life, in their career, is they're trying to play a different role than actually the role they came here to play. Because once you actually play the role, and well, it's actually not even play the role, it's just be the role, stop playing other roles and actually just be the one here you came here to be, life gets so much easier and you achieve success so much quicker. Something unique that's really happening right now on this planet is that if you are out of alignment with where you're meant to be and who you're meant to be, it's getting really hard to achieve success. Using the same strategies, the same tactics, the same everything you may have used years ago that actually worked. What's happening now is they're not working anymore because life is becoming very unforgiving in many ways. That if you are not in alignment with the truth of who you really are and what you came here to do and be, it's getting really hard to move ahead. And it's doing that for you because it wants to reorient you. And that's what this podcast today is about. It's about reorienting you into the role you actually came here to play because you are unique, rare, and different because you are more conscious in a system that's not that conscious, right? The corporate system is not very conscious overall. It's built on a foundation of a lack of integrity, right? A lot of distortion, politics, games, all those kinds of things. And if right now you are a much more conscious in that and you can see all these things, you are rare. And what needs to happen for you in this moment, if you want to move ahead, create success, not only for yourself, but also help create change that you know can happen and you want to help and be part of that shift, is you have to reorient yourself and accept the role that you actually came here to embody. Not the role you came here to play, like I said earlier, but the role you actually came here to be. And that is a new paradigm leader. That's a new era leader. And the new era leader leads completely different than the leaders of yesterday. So in this video, in this podcast today, I'm going to talk about what old leadership did and what you might still be doing to try to get ahead and what you need to do instead. What is the new role that you need to claim for yourself because you do need to claim it? What I see so many people doing who are conscious right now is they are trying to do things the way everyone else is doing them, and it is not working because it's not meant to work for you in that way. So if you look at how leadership has been done in the corporate system over, say, the last 20 years, there's really a lot of, I'll say, convincing energy. There's a lot of politics, there's a lot of game playing, there's a lot of really distortion, meaning it's all just like it's a game. I mean, it's really just a game that's being played. And most people can see it. You're supposed to say what you're supposed to say, do what you're supposed to do all these things to get results. But it's really a narrative that's being followed. And because it's a narrative, because it's not really true, it's a lot built on distortion, there's a lot of convincing that has to go on. If you think about it, if, as a leader, you spend a lot of time convincing people of things, whether you're conscious of that or not. Saying things 5 times is because you're having to convince somebody of something, convince them to do something, to see it this way. And the reason why in the old paradigm we have to spend so much time convincing is because it's not based in truth. You see, when you speak from truth, you don't have to convince anyone of anything because truth doesn't need convincing. You know, it's so interesting as you watch, and I don't watch the news. I stopped watching the news, God, 20 years ago when I realized it was all just inducing fear. But if you look at the narratives on just on the planet over the last number of years, The news has become a platform to convince you. And for me, as an awakened person, a higher consciousness person, as soon as somebody tries to convince me something and really keeps pushing that, I immediately start to discern something. I look and I go, I feel like there's a lie going on here somewhere. Because what I know to be true is that when somebody is speaking truth to me, they don't need to convince me. It just is. And we can feel it. So what we have the corporate system is a lot of convincing. And somebody who is awake and is functioning in that system right now, you're probably having to convince people a lot. You're spending a lot of time convincing people of things and maybe of new ideas, of new ways of doing things. You might be doing that. You're likely over functioning. You are picking up the slack. You are doing more than others. You're going in earlier or staying later. You are catching all the balls because other people are dropping them. And you think to yourself, well, I have a higher awareness and I can do this, so I do it, right? You are holding a lot of the emotional intelligence. So where you see people are maybe not operating at a level that's very high in integrity, you're trying to keep the integrity up. So you're always trying to keep things at a higher level. But what you're really doing is that you're exhausting yourself because you're over functioning. You're trying to convince, you're overworking, you're over convincing, you're over caring, you're doing all these things. And this is typically what happens when somebody starts to wake up. They realize they've been doing all this stuff. And the problem is we don't see another way of doing things because that's how leadership was. The reason why we've had so much burnout in middle management and middle leadership over the last number of years, just at an astronomical rate, is a lot of these leaders have been waking up and they're over functioning. They're doing way more than they're meant to do. And it's somewhere, and I know this was like me when I was in corporate. I always thought to myself, well, I can do this, so why shouldn't I? And that's typically what happens when somebody starts to wake up, is they realize that the rest of the world is operating at a lower frequency, not a worse frequency, but a lower frequency. It's a different frequency. And so they overcompensate, they overdo things. But I'm here to tell you two things happen when you do that. Well, more than two, but just two key things. You exhaust yourself completely because you're over functioning consistently, and you don't get ahead. And I'm going to explain why you don't get ahead, because I want you to get ahead because you have a role to play. So what you need to understand is that the way leadership has been in the corporate system is it's like we're dragging people along. You hear a lot on platforms like LinkedIn where we talk about you got to have more compassion as a leader, more empathy. And that is for a certain type of leader. There are leaders who do require that, but most of the people I see, they have too much compassion, too much empathy, too much, to the point that they self-sacrifice. And that is leading from the old paradigm. Because what the old paradigm taught you, and this is really, really important, everything is energy, okay? Now, when it comes to consciousness, as a higher consciousness person, like I said, not necessarily better, just a higher consciousness level, you can lower your consciousness in a flash of a second. Okay, so all you have to do is turn on the news, go into the stories, the fear stories that they tell you. And if you're not checking in with yourself, you can immediately go into fear, lack, and scarcity in a flash of a second. So you can be all empowered and in your authenticity and feeling great. Watch the news, and in a flash of a second, you can lower your frequency and be in fear, depression, a whole bunch of things, right? That can happen very, very quickly. But what can't happen very quickly is people who are in a lower consciousness, who are in fear, lack, and scarcity, and those kinds of things, depression, and just not empowered at all. They don't have to be in depression, but they can be completely disempowered. They cannot jump their frequency really high. To increase your frequency takes time, okay? So when you raise your consciousness, what most people do for the first while, and this can go on for years, is they understand that the only way I can relate to people now, even though I'm at a different frequency, I'm up at a higher frequency, because these people can't lower their frequency really quickly, but I can raise their frequency really quickly, but I can lower mine really quickly is they constantly lower their frequency. And this looks like convincing, overworking, overdoing, overfunctioning. This is all those things. And you might even be trying to convince people there's a better way of doing things. But what you're really doing that whole time is you are lowering your frequency. And likely you're feeling very stuck because the way you create success is by keeping yourself at a high frequency. If you keep lowering your frequency to try to relate to people, and this can come through in all sorts of ways. We see this where, as a manager or as a leader, you feel bad for somebody so you don't hold them accountable. It can look like that. It can come with really great intentions. But it doesn't change the fact that if you're doing these types of things as a leader, you are lowering your own frequency. And that is going to exhaust you over time. And it probably has already. And it will actually not lead you to your next level of leadership and your next level of success. Because you are trying to achieve something by dragging people along, and you are lowering your frequency to do it. And you are paying the price. As a new paradigm leader, you are here to create change, but you cannot create change by lowering your frequency. That's what the old style of leadership taught you, though. It's important to see that it taught you to lower your frequency. That's not what you're here to do. You're not here to bear the brunt of a lower consciousness on this planet. That is not your role. And that's why this podcast here is so important today, because what I'm sharing is really you need to reorient yourself completely from the person who lowers themselves to try to help humanity, help your team, help whatever it is. Your role now is to hold your frequency up here. That's what the new paradigm leader does. They hold their frequency, they don't lower it. Now, what does this mean? This means holding your standards, holding your consciousness, not playing political games, not posturing, not performing, not distorting, being 100% in truth and authenticity and in your power. That's what this new leadership requires of you. Because what happens when you hold your frequency up here, and I am going to tell you this takes work. This will not come naturally at first. It will not, because that's not what's been taught to this point. What happens is people who are operating at this lower frequency start to see a new way. They start to see a new way. And what you do is you give them permission to not do things the old way. But you cannot give them permission to do things the old way if you're doing things the old way. If you look back throughout history of the world, okay, I'm not talking about the last, say, 20 years in corporate, but if you were to look back at the leaders that stand out throughout our history, they are not people that sat there trying to convince people, trying to drag people along. They sat at that high frequency, that high standard, that high caliber of truth and authenticity. They spoke their truth. They were not attached to whether you followed or not. They're like, this is just me. I'm being who I am in their power. One example that I love, and this is somebody who's had an impact on my life when I think about this, is Rosa Parks. When she was asked to give up her seat on a bus for a white person, she didn't sit there and try to convince them to see her value or her worth, because that's a low frequency. But that's what so many people are doing right now. You're lowering your frequency to try to get people to see you, to hear you, to recognize your value, whatever it looks like. She just refused to move. She refused to move and said, I don't, I'm sure what went through her mind is, Like, I'm just done. I don't care what you think of me. I'm done. I'm not going to keep proving my worth. I'm not going to do all these low vibrational things. She stood in her truth and she stood in her power. And that's why we remember her. She changed history. She didn't lower herself at any moment. Again, this is not better or worse, because that's ego and that's separation. That's not what we're about. It's about understanding that true leadership, which is what we're moving back into, is when you hold the field so cleanly and so purely that you become the light, you become the lighthouse for others to follow along with you. You are not meant to keep lowering yourself to what you know to be true to drag others along with you. That is called self-sacrifice. That is not called leadership. But that's been called leadership in the corporate system. But that is not the truth. So what you need to do is hold yourself in such a high standard, and you then create the light, because what happens then, as I said, people see the lighthouse, but you also create the success, because you are here to do two things. You are here to lead. You are here to lead at a higher consciousness level because you were awakened, but you are also here to create success for yourself. You are here for both of those things. You are not meant to sacrifice yourself for the system. No. That's the old way of doing things. That does not fly in the new paradigm. If you are self-sacrificing, you're not going to get ahead. So right now, if you have been doing all these things, beautiful, acknowledge it, see it for what it is. We can just look at it and go, okay, because everyone's done this. I'm telling you, most people have done this. I did this for years. I tried to convince people of my value, of my worth, of my ideas. I spent so much energy holding people up, holding relationships together, holding teams together, holding projects together, holding every freaking thing together, thinking because I had that higher consciousness level, that was my job, but I was wrong. And I had to learn the hard way. And I think in some level, we all have to. This is about reclaiming your power and holding that power so strongly. So we all have to learn this. This is a transition. This is the next evolution of your leadership. So where you're at right now, this just means you don't stop. You're not where you're meant to be. And the real difference is, and I want you to hear this, is consciousness isn't just about having new awarenesses in our logical mind. What we have to do now, and the step here for you now, is to embody that higher level of consciousness. And that's by holding this field as strongly and cleanly as you can. And this is the work that I do with my clients, because it does take work. It is going to feel uncomfortable at first because it is very foreign. It's not what any of us were taught. But this is about holding your power and reclaiming your power and holding that standard when everybody else around you is not doing that. Because remember, you are rare. You are unique. This is your role. We've got to reorient yourself into this role that you actually are meant to be in. You've been just playing other roles. Now the time is now for you to actually embody the role that you came here to be, and stop performing all these other roles that were never really meant to be you. So I've got a few things coming up that I want to mention here. So first of all, I've got the New Era Leader Masterclass. I'm really organizing now for the next one that's coming in January. The first one was December 10th. The second one's coming now and it's just a repeat of the same masterclass, New Era Leader. The registration will be below for that. I've also got my calendar opened up for December for 60-minute one-on-one sessions with me if you want to get clarity on anywhere, anything in leadership, career, success, where you're wanting to move next. We go deep, we get into the energetics behind what you're doing, and we create, we find clarity on where you're blocked, where you're stopping yourself so you can move forward. Then, of course, I have my 3-month programs, 6-month programs as well. What clients will often do as well, what is quite popular, is you can sign up for a 60-minute one-on-one session with me to try it out, to see how we mesh together, see how you like it, see if it resonates with you, because it is, a resonance that we've got to work through together. And then what often they'll do is they'll try it out once, and then they'll decide they want to do a 3-month package. And what I actually do is if you do that, if you do a 60-minute one-on-one session with me and you decide within 48 hours that you want to do like a longer package with me, is I actually deduct the investment of the 1 hour with me off the price of the whole package. So then it ends up that first session ends up being basically free. So that's something I offer if you're wanting to try out mentorship with me and see if it aligns with me and what your goals are. And it's a really good time to set yourself up now for 2026. Don't wait until January. What is I've learned over the years is I do not believe in New Year's resolutions at all. Okay, like I think it's crazy to think that we only align with our goals once a year. But what I do know is I understand energy. And I understand that the world energy shifts January 1st. People are more hopeful, they're more motivated, and you want to ride that wave of energy shifting because you see lots of posts, you see your friends doing things, your family, and what we do is we all start to rise together, and you will rise quicker if you've already really laid the foundation in December. So I know for me, I always do a lot of my personal development in December. Seems contrary, but I do because it sets the stage for me in January. So when everybody's energy is up, I can ride that wave of energy and I can have greater results than I ever thought possible because of that energy of January. So I invite you to actually line your personal development up here in December. Line it up and actually start it in December, and you will start January 1st way ahead of where you ever thought you could be. So I'm going to put the links for everything down below, whether this is on YouTube, you're watching this, or on the podcast in the show notes. All right, beautiful soul. I will talk to you soon.